The English word rest appears in the King James and the New King James 8 times in Hebrews 3 and 4 combined. 8 times you'll see the word rest. 7 of those times it is translated from Strong's Greek 2663 or 2664, katapausis or katapau. 7 of the 8 times the word rest comes from there. And go look up the Greek. That is a good translation. The 8th time in Hebrews 4 verse 9, the word is sabbatismos, which is Strong's 4520. It literally means keeping of a Sabbath. Even though the King James muffed the translation of Hebrews 4 verse 9 when they said, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. And if you read that and you read the 7 other times rest occurs in Hebrews 3 and 4, you'd think it's the same word. No, it isn't. Even the King James translators were honest enough to put a footnote that says, or keeping of a Sabbath. They knew that's what it meant. It didn't mean rest. If you have a decent King James or New King James Bible, it'll have a footnote. For example, my Schofield New King James, the margin note for Hebrews 4 verse 9 says, quote, literally keeping of a Sabbath. So what Hebrews 4 verse 9 should say is, there remaineth therefore a keeping of a Sabbath to the people of God. So when people claim there's no New Testament command to keep the Sabbath, or when they make the ridiculous statement that the 10 commandments were done away with, but 9 of the 10 were recommanded in the New Testament, but not the Sabbath, which is absurd. The original 10 commandments did not come with an expiration date. Isaiah 66 verse 23 shows that one day in the future, all mankind will be worshiping on the Sabbath. So the idea that the Sabbath is the only command that wasn't recommanded and that it needed to be recommanded is ridiculous. But if you read the Greek, Hebrews 4 verse 9, there you go. Lambs's translation from the ancient Eastern text, from the Aramaic of the Peshitta, Lambs's translation, this is how he renders Hebrews 4 verse 9. Quote, it is therefore the duty of the people of God to keep the Sabbath. Go look it up. So, I've said this in videos before that in Hebrews 3 and Hebrews 4, the word rest is translated from katapausis or katapau every time except for one, which is Hebrews 4 verse 9. Therefore, it was heartening to see that when I got the New King James Study Bible, which is, I think, Thomas Nelson, this is their footnote, and they are not a pro-law, pro-Sabbath study Bible. That I could tell you. This is what they say for Hebrews 4 verse 9. Quote, the Greek word for rest in this verse is different from the word used in verses 1, 3, 5, 10, 11, and chapter 3, verse 11 and 18. See what they say? They're saying what I've said. The word translated incorrectly as rest in Hebrews 4, verse 9 is not the same word translated rest in the rest of Hebrews 3 and Hebrews 4. Continuing, this word means Sabbath rest and is found only here in the New Testament. So the not pro-law, not pro-Seventh-day Sabbath, New King James Version Study Bible admits the word translated rest in Hebrews 4 verse 9 is not the same Greek word translated rest in Hebrews 3 or Hebrews 4 in the other 7 instances. It's interesting that the translators were led to make such a blatant mistake because of anti-Sabbath bias. The modern translations seem to correctly translate it. Lambda translates the Aramaic. I'll read it again. It is therefore the duty of the people of God to keep the Sabbath. And even if you have a good King James, their footnote says, or keeping of a Sabbath. Does it have to be more plain? We know it's going to be kept in the future. Isaiah 66, verse 23. We know from Zechariah 14, verses 16 through 19, the Feast of Tabernacles will be kept in the future. And I've said before, Matthew 12, verse 12 is the death blow to the anti-Sabbath argument. Why would Jesus talk about what is lawful to do on a day that he knew was going to be done away with? Why would you care what is lawful to do on a day you don't have to keep anymore? Because Christ knew it wasn't going to be done away. It was not going to be done away with. He was the I am. Before Abraham was, I am. He was there when the day was blessed. No one has ever shown, and pause the video, Where in this book was the blessing ever taken off of the day? It wasn't. When was the blessing ever put on Sunday? It wasn't. I'll give it to the Catholic Church and their scholars. They are honest. They say, you can't find a change of day of worship in this book. We changed it. They admit it. They're intellectually honest. They're not like those that claim to be sola scriptura, who in actuality are really Rome light, if you think about it. How can you bash the Roman Church and yet you follow their day of worship and you follow the holy days they instituted? You just got rid of some of their excesses, but they don't claim to be sola scriptura. They know they changed the day. They know history. And their scholars tend to be a lot smarter than the average Protestant scholar. That I could tell you. So they know. Go read Canon 29 of the Council of Laodicea. I read that in my latest video. Go read it. That and stuff like, and that was around 364, that and Constantine's Day of the Sun Edict around 321. That is why, along with growing anti-Semitism, is why the day was changed. I mentioned when the Roman Jewish Bar Kokhba revolt ended in 135 AD, there was an extreme, even more anti-Jewish sentiment. And the compromising church did everything it could to disassociate itself from anything that seemed even remotely Jewish. And that's why in 135 AD, even though when Hadrian rebuilt the area of Jerusalem, he renamed it Aelia Capitolina, that's one clue that they were trying to do everything they could to stamp out Judaism. Circumcision and Sabbath keeping were illegal in Judea after 135 AD. As I said, the rebuilt Jerusalem was renamed Aelia Capitolina. And in 135 AD, the Church of Jerusalem had its first non-Jewish bishop, Marcus. That was after 15 circumcised Jewish bishops. The church tried to do everything it could to disassociate itself from things that they claimed were Jewish. They were actually Godish. The Sabbath was blessed before there was any Jewish man. Anyway, aren't we supposed to be spiritual Jews? I think it's Romans, where is that? Galatians? Well, Galatians 3, verse 29, and if ye be Christ's, then are ye Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promises. So we have that verse. So just to call something, this is what I wanted. Romans 2, verse 29. But he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. So we are supposed to be spiritual Jews. So just to bash things we don't want to keep claiming they're Jewish is most illogical. We're supposed to be spiritual Jews. The Word made flesh, when he came as Jesus, was a Jew. So to say, well, that's Jewish. No, the days are Godish, but the Jews were keeping them. So anyway, what was my point? Oh, my point was to show that Hebrews 4, verse 9, that word rest is not the same. I've told you in the past, it's sabbatismos. It's not the same. The not pro-law, not pro-Sabbath NKJV Study Bible agrees in their footnote. And we know that Christ wouldn't have talked about what is lawful to do on a day he was only going to get rid of. We know from Isaiah 66, verse 23, the whole world would be worshiping from one Sabbath to another. And I've asked, no one could show when the blessing was taken off the day. The day did not, the original Sabbath command, the 10 commandments, when they were written in stone by the finger of the Almighty, did not say best if used by 31 AD. And nobody seriously thinks that we could dishonor our mother and father now, that we can commit adultery or steal or lie. Why do they fight the one command? Why was that the command we are told to remember? Why was it the longest of the 10 commandments in Exodus 20? Read this book and read history for yourself. I'm not saying this message to attack people that keep a different day, that don't keep the Sabbath, keep Sunday. I don't go on their posts and attack them. People have a right to believe what they want. I'm not trying to make them feel bad. You're not my target audience if that's you. My target audience is those who keep the Sabbath, trying to bolster their faith in the Sabbath, and it's also those that are honestly seeking. I'm not trying to bash others. I don't go on your posts and respond. People should be free to believe what they want. But for those that are interested in the truth, I'm presenting this. And for those that do keep the Sabbath, I'm trying to bolster your belief in the Sabbath. So go look up the Greek for Hebrews 4, verse 9 for the word rest. As Adrian Monk would say, you'll thank me later. Peace all.